Hello and welcome. This is Business Edge right here on News Central, and I am MaryAnn, sitting in, of course, for Tululokbe Adele Rubalogun. Now, first the headlines. AfDB grants Uganda $500,000 to finance MSME. And in Kenya, Micro-Insurtech startup raises about $2 million in seed funding. And later on NC4 to watch, we will bring you big stories. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll start with our first big story in Uganda. The African Development Bank, AfDB, in partnership with the Uganda government, have signed a $500,000 grant agreement for financing of micro, small and medium enterprises to boost business linkages on the East African Crude Oil Pipeline Technical Assistance Project. Now, the grant agreement was signed by the AfDB Acting Senior Vice President and Chief Finance Officer, Swazi Shabalala, on behalf of the African Development Bank and the Ugandan Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Matia Kasaja. Now, according to the bank, the project's overall objective is to help develop capacity of local Uganda MSMEs along East African crude oil pipeline by enabling them to access new market opportunities and build linkages with larger national, regional and international companies. Now, my guest in the studio is Abdulateef. Abdulateef, it's good to have you join us in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I mean, my first question obviously will be, would the funds get the intended recipients and not with politicians? Because we know how it is in Africa. Most times monies are earmarked, huge chunks of amounts of monies are earmarked for things to be done, and those monies are funneled into the pockets of either friends of politicians or politicians themselves. Don't forget that in South Africa right now we have a government aide who is being investigated for monies for asbestos that was supposed to be used in bettering the lives of the people of South Africa. So where does this money go?
What we anticipating is that because AfDB has mechanisms for checking what loans are used for in various states that it offers these loans, it will be able to pursue a collaboration in which loans are given and then they are monitored. The use of these loans are monitored until there is a positive feedback to it, because it makes no sense to simply release loans and not bother about how these loans are utilized. So it is, while it is known that there's a lot of clientelism and a lot of graft in the system of most African states, what we are looking at or anticipating is a need for AfDB to actually collaborate with the government and ensure that these funds are used the right direction.
Now, we know that borrowing has become a means of sustaining governments across the world, but do they really have a plan to pay back? I mean, again, Africa's most populous nation, Nigeria, has been so indebted, and I know that this is detailed for so many countries. Countries always owe, but for Africa, it seems like, we've overdone it, and there seems not to be a plan underway for these monies to be paid back. So do you see this happening anytime soon? Is it in the works? Is it being considered?
So East Africa is one of the regions that is highly indebted, considering how much loans they've gotten so far. But what is of importance, or what is of concern, is that there's also a youth population burst in East Africa. And where you do not pay back these loans, you make business and enterprise a bit clumsy for people who ordinarily will want to invest in these regions, and it blocks chances. It blocks opportunities for ordinary young people to access, services that will improve their lives. So government will not want to risk a chance where there will be uprisings because of them being neck deep in loans that are unsustainable. Especially looking at the fact that the East African Petroleum Pipeline project is a massive one that will connect most of those countries in East Africa. So in terms of loan repayment, while sometimes unstable government policies will make it impossible for loan repayment, we see Uganda as being stable, even if under one president for a long time. There's a chance that the repayment will be effective because policies will not hit a somersault just overnight. That is the anticipation at the moment.
All right, let's talk about infrastructure deficits, which has been lagging across, Africa. This also drains and makes doing business more expensive. How can nations reduce this particular draining to boost productivity? Because governments come up with ideas, again, very, very bogus ideas. And in Nigeria, I think we call them elephant projects, and at the end of the day, it's unsustainable and there is no productivity at the end of the day. How can African governments, see ways that they can enhance productivity? Okay,
so one of the best ways of ensuring there is productivity in terms of earmarking sums for infrastructural development is to ensure that there's a monitoring process. Because when you know that you are being watched, you are being monitored, you are being asked to account for every single naira or shillings, as the case may be, what it means is that you'll be more accountable and you'll rather do the right thing than sidestep the policies that you need to take in order to achieve your aim. So monitoring from, especially open governance that will ensure that whatever is being budgeted for is being accounted for, is being communicated to the people. People are able to track and tell what is happening. Because recently there was a little concern raised about the quality of infrastructural development between a construction project between Uganda and I think Burundi, where certain sums had been earmarked and it was meant to expand to allow for trade and investment to be boosted between these two regions. But it was said that the quality of job is poor and therefore it has to be redone. And so that is, for me, that is a plus for those who are able to figure this out. And unless there's, there's eternal vigilance,
But this is just for one country.
Yeah, between two countries.
Yes, exactly. But again, this cannot be said that it's the same thing that would be happening all across Africa. We know that there are double standards.
Yes.
There are people who pander towards either the government in power, friends of the government. Who's going to watch who? That's the thing.
So
accountability is called to question here.
That is where being, membership in AfDB comes in. You do not expect these loans to just be released and without feedback from monitors from the AfDB. So there will be monitors who will keep track of what is happening. What we expect, however, is that both people in government and ordinary citizens of Uganda should be able to, raise alarm when they have concerns, over the quality of what has been delivered or the timelines, of what has been promised and what has been delivered. This will help, putting it in the open will put everybody on their toes and ensure that everything that needs to be done gets done.
Interesting. Well, Abdulateef is still here. We'll take a break. It's still Business Edge on News Central TV. When we come back, we'll take a trip to Kenya. Stay with us. Still Business Edge on News Central TV. We start in Kenya, where Kenyan Micro-Insurtech startup Turaco has raised $2 million in seed funding as it seeks to expand further into sub-Saharan Africa. This is coming just days after Kuda, the fintech startup in Nigeria that operates a popular mobile bank for consumers and small businesses, announced that it has raised $10 million. Investors who took part in the funding include Novastar Ventures, Messicore Ventures, Mosha Ventures, GAN Ventures, and Zephyr Okon. According to Turaco, the fund will be used to drive growth of its operations in its current locations of Kenya and Uganda, and later facilitate expansion into a third market by next year. The financial support will also facilitate developing the next stage of Tereco's proprietary technology and recruitment of key hires to position of business for continued growth in 2021. Now, founded in 2018, Tereco is an InsurTech business that partners with local companies and mobile lending organizations to provide medical cover to unserved and underserved communities. Joining us on the show is Kiros Gubert. He's an investor in startups and an owner of a startup called Fire Media. We still also have Abdulateef here with us in the studio. It's good to have you join us, Mr. Gubert.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, great. Let's start by looking at the issue of investments in Africa. With all of these monies that have been put into the tech ecosystem, why is there a large unemployment rate among the average African youth?
That's a very good question. So I'll try to break it up into, at a high level, what tech really means in terms of fueling growth and some of the other structural issues. So we've seen phenomenal investment in the technology space, and one of the biggest appeals for investment in technology, obviously, is efficiency. So in some cases, deploying a lot of
I'm sorry, Mr. Gubert, we're having a little problem with your sound. Is it possible for you to ditch the headsets or your earpiece so we could hear you, because it's going in and out? Is it possible for you to do that? Can you hear me?
Hear me well?
Yeah, perfect. Now we can hear you. Go ahead.
Sure. So it's, as I was saying, I think tech investments, although the ticket sizes might be big, and one of the key sector for us on this side of the market has obviously been technology. But technology tends to bring efficiency, and actually in the short term, it tends to be a disruptor. So if you look at what online booking systems might do for the travel industry, on the short term, they tend to be a disruptor, as they will probably displace older models like travel agents and the like. But in the long run, it tends to create new industries by itself. So now you'll need more skilled labor, more developers, more technology, skill sets to be applied to the market. On a bigger picture, I think if you look at the total capital needed to really fuel the growth we need, although the Kudi mentioned deal of 10 million is rather big when you kind of put it in perspective, especially them trying to launch essentially a digital bank. And you see what the bank, how banks are capitalized, the amount of spending that needs to go to build a customer base. It's more of a drop in the water, and hopefully be one of many more investments to come. So I think it's the best way to put it is we're going through a transition, and there will be some frictional changes. There will be some structural changes.
Okay.
It'll be some time before we see the type of growth we're looking for, especially on the unemployment side.
I would have gone on to push you further on the issue of young people, because, I know it's different for different African countries, but in Nigeria, you have so many young people churned out every single year as graduates from universities, and some of them have somehow acquired skills on the side. But I think this is a discussion we can have another day. But let's talk about African leaders and their support for the growth of these startups. A lot of governments pay lip service to the fact that they're supporting growth of startups, they're supporting SMEs, but we really never see it in reality. Why aren't they committed to this?
So I can actually address the Nigerian youth unemployment. As some of the ventures I've helped build or invested in or run, we do tend to employ our significantly on the younger side on the demographic. Our average age is about 26. The biggest issue for us is in terms of scaling up, right? So there's let's say you build an enterprise that has about 600 people. To go to the next stage, we need access for credit. we need regulation that makes sense, something that's consistent. As you might be familiar, a lot of things are done through CBN circulars. So something can be circulated one day that will completely disrupt your business model.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of challenges, but simultaneously, I would say in terms of matching the skill sets, our biggest issue, honestly, is not just the people, but finding the right people. And, another challenge also is immigration. Believe it or not, I think in 2018, we lost 6 people to Canada. So that's been a challenge. On the government and policy side, fundamentally, I think the system is based on something that's inherited, that's old, like the old model of doing business that doesn't necessarily welcome new innovative companies. And that tends to create, this friction between, let's say, the old guard making room for the new guard. As you can imagine, digital bank being successful would definitely be a disruptor for the existing model we have even within the banking. So there's that back and forth. And finally, I think with government, it's just inconsistency. There isn't a consistent, rules that all of us can follow. All of us are equal till some are more equal than others when it comes to policy and regulation. And I think there are a lot of challenges, but I think we shouldn't focus too much on the short term and just look at the fundamentals. The fundamentals are still strong. It's the best market, relatively globally speaking. We still have a lot more room to grow. The average, 80% of the population is below 27. That tells you there's more for consumption, growth, and development. And I think we'll get there. In a lot of ways, we shouldn't, be too bearish. And I think government also has taken note when things are not, social issues are not addressed. Okay. The downside to it, especially when you look at the SARS protests, which, by some estimate has cost Nigeria about 11 billion just from about 2-3 weeks of protests. So that also gives government a very strong incentive to address those issues.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Gubert, for speaking with us. We appreciate it. Well, up next is NC4 to watch the big stories we are looking at in the business scene across the continent when we come back. And on NC4 to watch, we start in Ghana, where inflation rates dropped for the 3rd straight month. The inflation rate of West Africa's 2nd largest economy, Ghana, soared for the 3rd month in a row to the rate of 10.1%. However, food inflation rose to 12.6% in October, compared to 11.2% in September. And of course, the second story to watch is Nigeria, the most populous nation in Africa. Well, we're talking broadband penetration, which hits 45.3% in aids economic growth. Nigeria's Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Dr. Isa Ali Ibrahim Pantami, has directed the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, and the National Information Technology Development Agency as regulators of internet services to ensure the quality of the service improves. Well, that's great news. The minister noted that broadband penetration in the country, which increased to 45.43% at the end of October 2020, was due to increase to 4,061,731 broadband subscriptions between September and October of 2020. And our third story is coming from South Sudan, where the country has received financial aid from IMF. The International Monetary Fund has announced that it has approved about $52.3 million in emergency assistance to help South Sudan contain the fiscal impact caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, and also to provide critical fiscal space to maintain poverty reduction and growth-enhancing spending. And finally, on our 4 stories to watch in the business scene, SABC partners with Telcom South Africa to launch streaming service. Now, South Africa Broadcasting Corporation has collaborated with Telcom South Africa to launch an online streaming service in a 5-year deal. The new venture, dubbed Telcom One, will air the public broadcaster's free-to-air radio and TV channels and offer SABC rich archive and local content. Well, that's great news because it's all Africa first. Well, it's been a good show. Thank you guys for staying with us and bringing you up to date with the biggest business stories all across Africa. I want to thank my guest, Abdulateef, for being here. Thank you so much. And of course, don't forget to follow us on social media at News Central TV and tell us what you love about our show. We'd like to hear from you. I'm MaryAnn. Have a lovely day.